Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Copilot Compass, where each week we take a deep dive into Microsoft 365 Copilot. As always, I have the pleasure of being joined by my esteemed colleague, fellow Copilot enthusiast, and resident smart guy, Logan.
Thanks, Brett. Happy to be here.
And Logan, why don't you tell the folks at home a little bit more about what they can expect from this week's episode?
Yeah. So as always, we're going to get started with our question of the week, and then we're getting to our topic, which is all about prompting. So I know we talked a lot in the past about how prompting is kind of a skill in itself. So we're really going to dive into that this week. So yeah, it should be fun. And yeah, make sure you stay tuned to the end to get a sneak preview of what we have next. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment.
Awesome. Let's get into our question of the week.
Well, let's do it. Okay, so let's get into our question of the week. And remember, you can submit your own with a comment on this video, or you can click the link in the description and send us an email. So this week, our question is, how do you think Copilot can contribute to personal development and continuous learning for employees?
That's a good one. I've got a few ideas. Let's switch it up. Why don't you go first this week?
Okay, cool. Yeah. So there's a pretty specific use case, but specifically like in Excel, I've used Copilot, when I'm struggling to, figure out basically how to do something. And, Copilot has continuously like suggested me different types of formulas and different ways to think about things and kind of breaks down how, different formulas work and stuff. And I've honestly learned a lot of like new Excel stuff just through that, just through like,
Yeah.
kind of working with Copilot to solve a problem. And then it's just, stuff I can put in my back pocket and not have to ask Copilot for in the future. So kind of a specific use case, but I've quite honestly learned quite a bit. Yeah, using Copilot in Excel.
Yeah, I think, the way I was gonna go, that's a good one. That wasn't one of the ideas I had, so I'm
Like,
glad you went first. But yeah, I'd say, like using just the chat, it's can be super helpful with really, even for, yeah, I think the question was specifically personal development, but even like professional development, like you can use it to, um, you know, let me give you an example, like checking certifications and like comparing different options. Like maybe you're like, I'm ready to learn a little bit more about project management. I've done a little bit of project management in my role. I want to get, better at the skills there and learn a little bit more like formal training rather than just on the job training. And you might be wondering, okay, what's out there? And you can use, prompt Copilot with, hey, maybe I want to compare the four most reputable project manager certifications. And then you might ask it specifically, okay, can you categorize these by the number of training hours required before you can take the certification or the cost, things like that, and build them into tables. So comparing, those things. And then just really, I mean, it's a great educational tool, like for aiding in research, like if you're looking to get to understand a little bit more about a topic like, well, take a non-work related one unless you work in like ship manufacturing, but like if you want to learn a little bit more about, 1700s replica pirate ships, like we use that example in a few episodes, you can really ask specific questions, get materials just directly there. If it tells you something, it's going to always kind of have that that like reference point or whatever, like that little box with the number next to it where you can go right to the source and take a deeper dive if you want. So I guess, your example was in Excel, mine specifically with that chat function for, you know, learning, I guess.
yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah,
All right. Well, we ready to start talking about prompting?
yeah, let's do it.
Awesome. So today we're going to talk to you about the art of the prompt. And, it really is an art, not necessarily a hard skill. It's Prompting is really important. I think, Copilot, you're only gonna get out of it what you put into it, as far as the amount of, attention to detail that you give to your prompting. I think, this is one thing when we do, those art of the possible sessions, what we see is a lot of times as people start to try and experiment with it is that they're treating their prompts like they would a Bing or a Google search, where they're short, short phrases, very specific, like keywords. But Copilot uses natural language. You want to treat it like a human being, and I think another important point is that general prompts are going to give you general responses, and specific prompts are going to give you specific responses. So we'll show a quick example of that as we get into our crow's nest, but we'll start by showing you how to structure a good prompt. And I think like if I'm looking at like there might be use cases with Copilot. I'm just looking for something really quick. Like I just want to, ask it a question like, hey, our example from the question of the week, 1700s pirate ships. I want to learn more about it. But there might be other times where I'm looking for it to help me build, like a go-to-market plan for a new service we have, or something along those lines where I do want to be very specific. And in those cases, I'm going to make sure that I'm always sort of checking these 4 boxes that we're going to show you here in a moment. So again, I think prompting is an often overlooked topic, especially as it comes to early user training, but an important one. So I'm looking forward to, kind of discussing this and showing some examples of general prompts and specific prompts. So you ready to get started?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So I want to talk about structuring a prompt. What you're seeing here, there's kind of 4 key categories that come with a really, really good and specific prompt. So the first one is a goal. And this is says simply could be phrased as, what kind of response do I want? Do I want a detailed project plan? Do I want ingredients for a recipe? Do I want an image? So what is the goal? What are we trying to achieve? This next one, I think I would say is one of the more common things to miss, but it's the context. Shape it for Copilot, like what's the audience going to be for the material you're using? Is it just for you? Is it going to executive leadership? Is it going to a financial analyst? Like, and giving it that context will help it understand the audience helps it frame the material it gives you. If it thinks it's an executive, it might be giving you high level kind of bullet points and cliff notes. Whereas if it's a financial analyst, it may have some more, detailed calculations or, I guess like more data to it, if you will. So giving it that context and letting it understand the audience can be really helpful. Another big one is the source. If you are, and even if you're using like a web-based search or web-based, a chat, you're gonna want to tell it like where you want it to look. Like if I'm uh, trying to learn a little bit more about a prospective customer or like a client that we're meeting with for the first time, I may ask Copilot, tell me more about X, Y, and Z company. And that will give me some generic information because it's a generic response, but it's also going to pull from all kinds of sources. But maybe I want it to be a little bit more, excuse me, a little bit more reputable. So I might tell Copilot, tell me more about X, Y, and Z company based on their LinkedIn profile, their company website, and news articles from reputable sources in the last 3 months. So I'm narrowing down the field to the types of sources that I want. And then if you're using the work context, referring to specific files, specific SharePoints, specific meetings that have occurred, that's going to be helpful as well. So, being specific about the sources will really help you make sure that you have quality information. And then lastly, be clear about your expectations from Copilot. Like, I want no more than 2 paragraphs in your response, or I want it in bullet point format. But the more specific you are with the expectations, the better the result is going to be that you're going to get back. So again, I think that, like this is one where we do those art of the possible sessions or promptathons and people start, trying Copilot for the first time. You're going to see a little bit of the goal, probably nothing context, maybe nothing source wise, and maybe touching on the expectation. So I think, and then people can get frustrated because it's like, well, why isn't Copilot understanding what I'm telling it? But it needs these 4 key components here in order to be able to give you a really, really good response. So what does this look like in an example? So what we are going to demo for you, sort of a basic response or a prompt rather, and then a more detailed prompt. But before we do that, I want to show you an example of what one might look like. So I'm going to say for the goal, I want 3 to 5 bullet points. So I'm specific. I'm not saying I want bullet points or I want a response on, or I want information about it. I'm saying I want 3 to 5 bullet points. And then the context, I'm preparing for a meeting with a client to discuss their phase 3 brand campaign. So now I know it's customer facing, it's client facing, it's not internal consumption. I need something that sounds really clean and polished. The source, I want to focus on email and Teams chat since June. So if I didn't specify that, now I'm saying focus, not only look at. So I'm prioritizing information that's coming from emails and Teams chats, but you can still look for OneDrive, SharePoints, things like that, maybe even the web for relevant information. But I'm telling it prioritize by focusing on these things. And then the last thing is, what's the expectation? I want simple language so I can get up to speed quickly. So very, I'm being specific in my expectations in the sense of I need to catch up quickly, needs to be simple language, so it's not going to give me, like a detailed, complicated response. So this is a really good prompt. It's got all four of those key components pretty well checked here. So I want to show you what the differences will look like if you are, using some of these prompts. So I will pull up Copilot here, and I'm just going to use the web version for the sake of the demo, but um, I want to build a project plan. And Logan, what's our project? You got any cool ideas?
Let me think. Project plan. We could do what we were talking about in the demo, or sorry, in the question of the week about some shipbuilding.
Okay. So I'm gonna frame this in a way that, like, as if I'm a new user, I'm treating it like a Bing or a Google search. So, project plan for building a replica pirate ship. Again, this isn't a good example of like a prompt that we'll see a lot of times from new users. So, it's got for me some, it looks really high level. I've got some planning, some timelines. So, I've got, a starting place, research and design. Um, basic stuff, very high level plan. It's covered in an entire project plan on a ginormous and probably expensive to build ship in a grand total of what, maybe 40 lines of text. So now let's try this again. So we'll go back and just remember here, the first thing is our goal. So I'm going to say, I want a detailed project plan, and then the context. So that will be used by a Uh, let's say, what would you call a team that would build the pirate ship? Are they manufactured? No.
Um, I mean, artists? I don't know.
Let's just say a team that will be building a pirate ship. Um, so I'm giving it the context. So the team is going to consume it. Now I'm going to say the source. So uh, use web-based information. I don't even, honestly, I don't know where to even look on the web for something like this, but yeah. And then we'll save the expectations. I want it to be detailed and include instructions for how our team will build this replica pirate ship. Um, Now let's try this one. Let's just see where we get to with this. All right, so it's a little bit more detailed. I can see the initiation phase. Um, I already can tell it's getting me some more bullet points in here, but and it's written in a different context here. So I'm seeing that it's got the project initiation. So there's nothing, we may recall in our first one that the first section was like, research and stuff. This is initiation. So how do we, what's the objective? What are the team roles? So now, since it knows it's a team, it's giving me roles for the team. Planning and design. So it's telling me, okay, there's research down here now, blueprints. So now maybe I want to say, maybe I can recognize from this, like, okay, I was expecting it to give me a high level design, but it didn't. But I didn't tell it to give me a high level design. So this comes back to being clear about my goals and expectations in my prompting. So maybe I'm going to try this again. So I'm going to say, um, add some uh, blueprints or instructions for us to build this ship. It should include specific safety steps and procedures. Let's see what we have here. So, and and this is common too. Like I run this all the time. Like, I think I have a good prompt. I look at the response from Copilot and I kind of scratch my head a little bit like, okay, it wasn't quite what I wanted. And so this is where you go back to and say, okay, did I tell it the right, like if the information you're getting is you think not right, you might be not giving it the right sources. Or did I not, if it's like, okay, this is written very scientific-y sounding. I don't think scientific is a word, but you get the gist. But if it's written, in a very detailed manner, I may not, and I was expecting something more high level. I want to go back to, did I give it the right context of who the audience is? So this is me recognizing, okay, I probably should know more specific about the goal and the expectations that I had. So now it's got some construction steps for me. So keel laying, framing, planking, decking, super structure, rigging. Okay, now we're getting a little bit more specific. And then it's got some safety instructions for me here. So this is a decent example. I think that these get better and better with, super relevant real world scenarios in business. But I think the main takeaway for us today, follow these 4 steps, and we'll pull this back up for you guys one more time just so you can see them one last time. What are the goals of my prompt, or what are the goals of my chat, my prompt? What do I want back from it? So be specific about what are those goals that I want. What's the context? Where do how's it going to be presented? How's it going to be viewed? What sources do I want it to draw from? And then lastly, what are my expectations? What does it need to have? So, um, I would encourage you, if you're a new Copilot user, put this as your background screen or put like a little sticky note next to one of your screens
Yeah.
with these 4 key categories. I think referring back to this until you kind of have this in the back of your head is super helpful.
Yeah.
In today's journey of the Copilot Compass, we talked to you about the art of the prompt and structuring prompts in a way to get the results out of Copilot that you're looking for.
Yeah. Hopefully you guys enjoyed our demos. I think that the kind of structured format for the prompts can be really helpful for somebody who's starting off in Copilot. Yeah. I wish I saw that slide when I first got my Copilot license, honestly. So yeah, that's good stuff. Yeah. So if you enjoyed the content, make sure you like, subscribe, and comment. Remember, we have Q&A sessions each episode, so make sure you leave a question for us. And new episodes come out each Tuesday, and make sure you stay tuned. You get a sneak preview of what we have next.
Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
See you next week.